Hi, I'm Jason Nichols, and I'm on the left.
And I'm Vince Colonnese, and I'm on the right. And if we can't find common ground in this world today,
then we're all just travelers.
Passing each other in an international airport.
In this great American experiment,
we'll be relegated to the trash bin of history.
So let's come together.
To debate without yelling. And let's save this nation.
Yet another busy news week means yet another great guest on Vince and Jason Save the Nation. Hang tight. Vince and Jason Save the Nation is brought to you by Goldco. To all of our listeners with an IRA, a 401k, or other retirement savings, have you seen the headlines today? Our federal debt has now reached over $30 trillion. What the federal government is not saying is that the Fed is running out of ways to fight our growing debt bomb. Inflation and tax hikes may be their only way out. We all dodged a bullet when Senator Joe Manchin announced that he wouldn't support the Democrats' crazy Build Back Better plan. But the truth is, the Democrats may not give up so easily. That is not good news for hardworking American taxpayers. Whatever the Democrats do in 2022 may mean even more and higher inflation. The more the dollar comes under attack, the more physical gold and silver could protect your money. So if you have over $50,000 or more in your retirement savings, your money could be at risk. Learn how you can protect your life savings with physical gold and silver. Call 855-948-1605 to receive your wealth protection kit. That's right, call 855-948-1605, and Goldco may give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open a qualified account. That's why Goldco is the only company we recommend for gold and silver. Goldco is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, a 5-time Inc. winner, and has countless 5-star reviews. So, what are you waiting for? Call 855-948-1605. That's 855-948-1605. Call Goldco and get started today.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Vince and Jason Save the Nation. I'm Dr. Jason Nichols, and that is my good friend, Vince Colonnese. Vince, we have a very special, important guest, someone who people have seen over and over again, very opinionated member of Congress. Who's with us today?
We have Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan joining us for the first time. So glad that's happening. Congressman, great to have you with us, sir.
Good to be with you guys. Thanks for having me on.
It's just been a wild week. What is the does the tenor ever change within Congress? Is it always just crazy all the time, or does now feel like a particularly fraught moment? I mean, obviously, a lot of concern about a war overseas, and certainly a lot of domestic issues at the same time.
No, it feels like the intensity has picked up. I would say since when President Trump ran and got elected, and then just the left went crazy going after President Trump. So I always felt like they in 2 impeachments and the Mueller and all that. So I just felt like the intensity and the sort of the divisiveness here has increased over the last several years. I don't know that that's all healthy for the country, but my attitude is you got to debate these folks. You got to go after them, because where the left, in my opinion, where they want to take the country is a dangerous place, particularly what they're trying to do to our First Amendment liberties. So you sort of have to fight them back.
I definitely want to dive into some of those issues, but I just on that collegiality front, kind of the relationship you have with especially Democrats in Congress, is it the same on camera as it is off camera? I think a lot of people kind of wonder, what are people like behind the scenes? There's been, for years, we always heard stories of Tip O'Neill and working across the aisle. And what happens nowadays? Do Democrats and Republicans even talk to each other in the hallways? What's going down?
It's kind of frosty with some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, but there are some that and I try to be kind to everyone, say hello to everyone when you pass them in the hallway and whatever. Peter Welch, for example, is a guy from Vermont. He's a big lefty, but he's an old school lefty who believes in the First Amendment. Dennis Kucinich called me last week. Dennis is a friend of mine, and we're about as far apart as you can be. But Dennis is a true old school liberal who believes in, let's have the debate. You make your argument, I'll make my argument. Let's see who wins the debate, who carries the day, whose bill passes. And then we'll move to the next issue. And Dennis truly believes in free speech, the First Amendment. The scary thing today is I think so many on the left, they no longer value the First Amendment and your right to speak. And if we disagree, okay, that's the way it works in America. But let's have the debate. So that to me is the real difference, and that's happened in the last decade. Because you just feel like today's left says, if you don't agree with me, you're not allowed to talk, and if you do, we're going to call you names and try to cancel you. That's not how the First Amendment's supposed to work in our country, and so that I think is a big concern, and what's led to this divisiveness.
So that's really interesting. And I would agree, Vince and I are pretty far apart on a lot of issues. Not all of them. I think there are some issues where we actually agree, but we're certainly far apart politically. But, you know, he's still someone who I consider to be a very good friend. And, you know, I love his wife even more than I like him.
Yeah.
But
Me too.
I will say, so do you are advocating for the First Amendment. Would you reject some of the things that are happening in some of our states like Texas, where they're banning books? You know, that sounds like, you know, a really dangerous place to go. And it seems like conservatives have been at the forefront of trying to ban books. Also, when you talk about collegiality, I know you're a big supporter of President Trump. And it seemed like he was someone who really led the charge in terms of name calling and vitriol in terms of social media and social media posts and bullying and trolling. So do you disavow yourself from those sorts of things?
No, well, with I'll go the latter one first. With President Trump, I never see President Trump, going after someone unless they first come after him. Now, one thing he will do is he'll fight back, and I think so much of the country appreciates that. To your first question, it is entirely appropriate to limit certain material from for children, for kids, there's got to be an appropriate age. But as far as we shouldn't be getting rid of canceling people, banning certain type of material. We shouldn't be doing that. But when it comes to kids' education, moms and dads should be in control of what kind of curriculum, what kind of things, particularly when we're talking about younger students, what they see. So to equate that to somehow we're limiting speech, getting rid of books, I just totally disagree with that premise.
They are doing that in Texas, where there are moves to take books out of libraries, public libraries, not children's libraries, not school libraries, but public libraries. So you disavow the conservatives who want to do that.
Well, I'd have to see the context of that and what that's a community-based standard, folks. I'd have to see the context there. I thought you were referencing schools, and it is entirely appropriate for moms and dads to be making decisions about the curriculum that their children are going to have in a public school. I thought that's what you were focusing on.
And with regard to President Trump, it seemed like he would attack people who disagreed with him, including some from his own party, some people that were pretty staunch supporters. I'm thinking of former Attorney General Mumbly Joe. What's his name?
Bill Barr.
No, not Bill Barr. One before him, the one who recused himself.
Jeff Sessions.
Jeff Sessions. Thank you. He was pretty harsh in the words he used for people like that and others within his own party. And you mentioned Bill Barr. Do you think that's appropriate?
Here's what I know about President Trump. He got more done, more of what he said he would do, more of what he told the voters he was going to do. Got more of that done than any president in my lifetime. Did it with everyone in this town opposed to him. Every single Democrat was against him. Everyone in the mainstream press was against him. A bunch of Republicans were against him. And maybe most importantly, everyone in the bureaucracy was against him. And in spite of that, got more of what he said he would do, got it done. I remember going to the White House. They had a whiteboard in the White House there in the West Wing. And they would literally list off the promises they had made during the campaign. And as they got those done, check them off, like reducing regulation, like cutting taxes, like putting the embassy in Jerusalem, like putting conservatives on the court, like getting out of the Iran deal, getting out of the Paris Climate Accords, Abraham Accord, everything they did. Just check them off. That's what I appreciate.
And I don't mean to cut you off. I hear what you're saying, but we were talking earlier about collegiality and whether it was appropriate for the president to attack people and how that would affect the collegial relationship between Democrats and Republicans. And I'm only asking, do you think it's appropriate, some of the attacks that he made, not necessarily keep his promises?
Here's what I'll tell you about President Trump. When you're around him, he is one of the most there is an energy about him, a charisma about him. And when there's a group of people, he makes everyone feel comfortable. I remember the time he called me. I said this at the Republican National Convention. I remember when he had called me, and we had just had a death in our family. Our nephew had been killed in a car wreck. I was walking into my brother-in-law's house, and he asked me about this. He didn't know I was walking in, and because he had heard about the death in the family. And I said, Mr. President, I'm actually walking into Eli's parents' house. And I said, obviously they don't know I'm talking to you, but if you had a few minutes to talk to a dad who was hurting, you would make a terrible day a little less terrible. And he said, what's his name again? And I told him Eli's father's name, my brother-in-law. He said, put him on the phone. He took 10 minutes to talk to a dad who was hurting. But you could have heard a pin drop in that room. Our entire family was there. This is just 2 days after our nephew had lost his life in a car accident. That's the kind of person he is. That the country doesn't get to see that. And certainly the mainstream press never lets the country see that. But I've gotten a chance to see that side of the president. And he's an amazing guy. And I tell you what, I hope he runs again. He did more good for this country than any president, as I said, in my lifetime, maybe in our country's history. I think we could use that back in the White House, particularly in light of what we have seen in the 14 months Joe Biden's been running the things. Oh my goodness, they've messed up every policy area.
More than Abraham Lincoln and a few other presidents. But
let me jump in here because I think this is a good opportunity for us to talk about the current commander in chief. There's obviously, I mentioned at the outset, we have a lot of domestic crises going on simultaneously. We're looking at a border crisis about to get worse. Inflation crisis that is pretty dramatic. We see Americans, 1 out of 5 of them, the reports this week, who can't actually make it to the next paycheck without expending all of their resources. And then, of course, going into debt. That's awful. And then we've got a very high stakes, fragile foreign policy thing that's going on right now. And the truth is, Joe Biden is stumbling through it. I mean, everything from calling for regime change to backing off those calls to once again calling for it. There's been some chatter on the right about, maybe it's time for the 25th Amendment. Maybe it's time for members of the cabinet to intervene and say, we need somebody who can at least, even if we don't agree with them, have a steady hand on this crisis. Are you there? Do you think that would be a good step, Congressman Jordan?
Well, here's what I know. We've never seen anything this bad. I mean, you can pick the policy area, Vince and Jason. I mean, look, we went from a secure border to complete chaos, 2 million illegal immigrants crossing our border in 1 year alone. We went from stable prices to record inflation, 40-year high inflation. We went from energy independence to the president begging OPEC, Iran, and Venezuela to increase production. I mean, come on. We went from relatively safe cities, safe streets to record levels of crime in every major urban area. And then the metaphor for the Biden administration, I think, or the picture that I think stays in people's mind is last summer when that plane was taking off in Afghanistan, and you had people trying to jump on the wheels of that plane. That is a picture of just how bad it's been. I think, what is it? 63% of the country thinks we're on the wrong track. The real question to me is who are the 37% who think we're on the right track, for goodness sake? So it's bad. Whether this cabinet will do that, I don't know. But every time you hear him speak, I think not only do Americans see like, what is this guy doing? But I think our foreign adversaries see the same thing, which is also troubling and compounds the concern I think that we all have for this administration.
I worry here because I have kind of conflicting concerns. I look back at the Trump era and remember that there were all sorts of bureaucrats within the administration who were trying to stop the president from pursuing his agenda. You had Miles Taylor, who called himself anonymous in the New York Times, saying he was a high-level official. He wasn't, but it was symptomatic of this notion within the administration that there needs to be bureaucratic intervention to stop the intentions of the president of the United States. Now we have Joe Biden in office, and something interesting that's happening, he'll come out and he'll say something, and the bureaucrats around him, some of the political appointees around him will say, whatever he said, he didn't mean that. And they'll back people off of that position.
Right.
Now, I don't like this. I don't like this world where the bureaucrats are running the show and that the president's words aren't good enough. But simultaneously,
wait, so you don't think that happened during the last administration, that people tried to clean up the president's words?
That's what I'm saying they did.
I recall that happening a lot.
Constantly. No, Jason, you're missing my point. I'm saying that happened constantly. And so I don't like that for any president. But simultaneously, I'm very concerned with this president's leadership.
Well, I get both points. And you're right about these unelected officials. I've said many times, say it in speeches. When did Dr. Fauci ever put his name on a ballot?
Right.
When did he ever go out and talk to we the people and actually run for office, talk to constituents? But he's the highest paid official in our government, and frankly ran our lives for the last year and a half. and put all kinds of restrictions on our liberty because, you know, it was St. Fauci, whatever he said, it seemed like Democrat elected officials then were going to do what he said, but he was never elected. So these unelected experts are not supposed to make policy in this country. It's supposed to be those individuals directly accountable to we the people,
right.
The people whose names are on the ballot get elected to office. They're supposed to make the decision. So I could not, that is a fundamental constitutional principle.
Yeah. So the only thing is like there are a couple of things that were stated that I think need a little bit of context. First of all, and you know, one of the things that I can't stand is when we get so partisan that I feel like I have to defend, you know, people that I don't necessarily want to defend. But I will say this, in terms of unauthorized
but you're gonna do it anyway.
You know, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, because I think things need truth, and I think we need to add actual context when people start spouting off. Because I actually heard you recently say the exact same line in another show, Congressman, where you said, you know, who are the other 37%? I heard you say those exact same talking point. But it's a good point though, Jason. No, I'm not saying it's you know, it's a fair point, but I'm saying like it read like a script. Like I could actually.
Jason, are you demanding fresh content? Is that what
I want fresh content? But no, Congressman. First of all, you know, the last time that we had a surge in immigration, in unauthorized migration, was 2019. And that was the highest surge in migration in 11 years. And that, as a matter of fact, was under, of course, the leadership of President Trump.
That's not true.
That is very true. Hold on.
What's accurate is what's happened in the last year. That's the high surge.
Prior to that, we had another surge in 2019.
Okay, I got it.
We had a surge in 2019, and then it dropped really low. Now, that wasn't because of leadership. That was because the world shut down in 2020. We also know that it started to gradually rise up as the world started to open up, or, you know, people started to take more opportunities and chances. It literally followed the path of the
that's not accurate.
That's absolutely accurate. We can put, hopefully, you know, I don't know if the Daily Caller would be willing to do it, but we can put a graphic up. I can send you a graphic. But
you're forgetting important policy that went in place too in the Trump era, which was the Remain in Mexico policy that our government had negotiated with Mexico to say we're going to have people trying to get into our country, seeking asylum, seeking refugee status, or just coming here. We're going to have them remain in Mexico until we check it out and see if it's legit. That's a good policy that was in place, and the Biden administration has moved away from that. That is
Title 42 is still in place.
Title 42 still, they're getting ready to get rid of that. Yeah, but the Remain in Mexico policy is different than Title 42. Yeah, sure. And that has the Biden administration has taken that away. That is a huge problem. And understand what took place in the Biden administration was a year ago, March was the highest month on record for illegal crossings until April. And then April was the highest month until May. And then May was the highest month. It just kept going up, which tells you it was deliberate. It was intentional.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that encounters means that the system is working or the system is not working? Because obviously, if they're encountering Border Patrol, that means that Border Patrol is actually doing what Border Patrol is supposed to do, right?
Well, yes and no, because right now what's happening, I've been to the border. I've been to the border a couple of times. I don't know if you guys have, but I've been to the border. Right now, what our Border Patrol agents are largely functioning as is processors. They're not like enforcing the border, keeping people from illegally entering our country. People are just coming and they're processing people. You saw that at the Del Rio Bridge a few months ago when you saw that huge number of migrants coming in, camped under the Del Rio Bridge. What they were doing is just trying to move them through as quickly as possible. And we know that when you do it that way, and that's the Biden administration policy, when you do it that way, people who aren't supposed to get into our country are getting through, namely some really bad guys. And not to mention, when you're focused on processing all these people coming in, some of them are going to get through who are bad people. You're missing over here. You got the drugs coming in, the fentanyl that's doing so much damage to so many communities around our country.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought up fentanyl because I think that is a major problem. But there were more drugs seized in the last 5 months of President Trump than there were in the first 4 months of President Biden. Now, Only thing that I'll say about that is that might be people doing their job. I'm not necessarily saying that says anything about President Trump or President Biden. But I think one of the things that gets, really, when people start making a lot of these partisan talking points is that they're not acknowledging that these are, that some of these things are just processes that we're experiencing. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about inflation.
Jason,
now, is inflation a global issue, or is it just something that the United States is experiencing?
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's some global implications as well. But what I know is what's happening in our country.
Right.
You got a 40-year high inflation, and real wages aren't keeping pace with the rising cost of the goods and services people have to purchase in their daily lives. I mean, and chief among those is the price of energy. And we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Biden policies have contributed to the spike in energy costs. Certainly what's happening in Ukraine has added to that as well. But the price was already going way up prior to Putin's invasion of Ukraine. So that energy drives so much of it, everything else, because you got to move goods around. That's just how our economy works. And if it costs more to move them and the energy used to produce them, that's a problem. And that's why we're seeing this 40-year high spike in prices, not to mention all the money that's been thrown into our economy and the spending by the Democrats.
So again, you would say that other countries like Japan, which is experiencing record inflation, the EU, which is experiencing record inflation, that, the fact that China is locking down still, they're locking down, I think I read they were locking down Shanghai. So they're still locking down major cities that, of course, is affecting global supply chains. You're blaming that on President Biden and not on the fact that this is a global issue.
No, I'm blaming the price of it. Here are the facts. The price of energy has went up dramatically. And so much of that is decisions that they made and messages they sent to the market. When you tell the market we're going to stop the pipeline, the Keystone Pipeline, you tell the market we're going to shut down ANWR, you tell the market we're not going to have as much leasing on federal lands, that sends a message. And because it is a global commodity, that's going to drive up price. That has in fact happened. When you flood the economy with cash like the Bidens have done, he just proposed the largest budget in history, $5.8 trillion budget with all kinds of largest tax increases in history. That's on top of all the money that they've spent over the last year relative to COVID, with a bunch of 300 some billion that we can't even still out there that hasn't been spent. So when you do all that, you're going to drive up the cost of goods and services. And that's exactly what's happened.
I think a couple of things jump to mind in Jason's point about the global economy. It does make sense, I think, that the United States being the world's #1 economy, if we are experiencing rampant inflation, the interconnected nature of the planet means that every other country is going to feel that too. So when it comes to the American dollar, especially when we are the global reserve currency, whatever policies happen right here in Washington, that will have far-reaching impact globally on other countries' inflationary experiences.
So the #2 economy is China. Has 2 billion people. That probably has an effect as well.
Yeah, no question. This is a multivariate thing. But look at what Larry Summers has been saying, former Obama Treasury official. He's been out saying this has been the government spending in concert with the Fed's easy money has made this massive inflation spike. And so what I want to ask you, Congressman Jordan, is about kind of the ideological thinking among Republicans and kind of how this has affected them. Because remember, during the Trump era, there was some debate among the populists and the national conservatives about kind of increasing government spending to direct it towards programs that conservatives cared about. Right. And so even, Mitt Romney at one point, although I wouldn't really call him a nationalist or populist, but he did come along with a child tax credit proposal, if you recall. And it was about spending more money, basically getting more federal money out the door to American families to help encourage the growth of American families. Do you think there's still energy for that? Or do you think some Republicans are beginning to reconsider those flirtations in light of the fact that it looks like the government spending played a massive role in inflation?
Yeah, I mean, look, the government spending, it's a problem just in and of itself. We got a $30 trillion debt. The Fed's talking about moving interest rates up a little bit, a quarter of a point, maybe even more. Each full point you move up the interest rate results in $300 billion more in debt service, just to service that huge debt.
Yes,
that's a lot of money. So there's concern there too, just in general with this huge debt. So I'm always nervous about more government spending. I think we have to have good tax policy that lets hardworking people keep their money, not give it to government where it's going to get wasted and spent. We just saw the story, I think it was an NBC story, that $250 billion they can't find was either lost or stolen of all the COVID money thrown out there. And then there's $300 billion unspent. Biden wants $22 billion more, and he just proposed a $5.8 trillion budget with the largest tax increases in American history. That is going to make matters worse. And Larry Summers will be, saying the same thing he's saying now, only it'll be worse. So yeah, I'm very nervous about that. We need good, sound tax policy that lets moms and dads and families and business owners keep more of their money to replow back into their family and their community and their business. That's just good basic sense. The one thing I think that was so important that President Trump did, though, is I've always thought we should be a populist party rooted in conservative principle. We're the party that believes in the Constitution, the First Amendment, protecting the Second Amendment. Moms and dads know better about their kids' education. That's why we're for school choice. Moms and dads make better decisions than government. Let families keep more of their money, keep tax rates low. That's just good, sound policy. But also this populist idea that, look, we should be about making sure America first, make America great again. That is a good thing. And that's why you see all kinds of people coming to the Republican Party. I think there was a great piece in the Journal a couple of weeks ago. There is a realignment happening in our country. The Democrat Party is quickly becoming the party of the super wealthy and people who don't work. And the Republican Party is becoming the party of everybody else. That's why you see union workers in Youngstown, Ohio, now voting for President Trump. That had never happened until the last couple of elections. That's why you saw Ohio go for Trump in 2016 by 8.5 points and in 2020 by 8.5 points. That never has happened before. So that's the new dynamic. We are becoming the populist pro-America party of everybody else. And the left, which now controls the Democrat Party, is the party of the super wealthy and, frankly, a lot of people who just aren't willing to work.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, given that the tax plan that Joe Biden is putting forth is one that taxes the super wealthy a whole lot. And also, the fact that President Trump's tax plan actually saved the super wealthy a lot of money. But I also think that, when you were talking about President Trump and how you like conservative principles, isn't it true that President Trump increased our deficit? Because I remember, in the 80s, I'm that old. I remember in the 80s, conservatives, it was all about deficits. Liberals want to spend too much money. And President Trump increased our deficit by almost $8 trillion. Now you can argue, I might understand where you're coming from if you're saying Joe Biden wants to add to that 8 trillion, but that 8 trillion was the third highest in history, behind, presidents who are usually dealing with wars, including Abraham Lincoln, who, I would disagree that President Trump has done more for the country than Abraham Lincoln. But, I still think that there's that's an interesting kind of contradiction there. Or is that a contradiction? Do I have it mixed up?
Well, no, you're right. There were deficits in the time that President Trump was president each year, did contribute to the debt. The debt went up, but you got to remember, it wasn't, Republicans weren't in charge of all government, and spending starts in the Congress. So we were able to get the tax cuts done in the first 2 years of President Trump's tenure in office. And then the Democrats took control, and then it's tougher. Since President Biden's been in office, he has contributed tremendously to the debt. And you just saw the largest budget request in American history with his $5.8 trillion that he rolled out this past week.
To all of our listeners with an IRA, a 401k, or other retirement savings, have you seen the headlines today? Our federal debt has now reached over $30 trillion. What the federal government is not saying is that the Fed is running out of ways to fight our growing debt bomb. Inflation and tax hikes may be their only way out. We all dodged a bullet when Senator Joe Manchin announced that he wouldn't support the Democrats' crazy Build Back Better plan. But the truth is, the Democrats may not give up so easily. That is not good news for hardworking American taxpayers. Whatever the Democrats do in 2022 may mean even more and higher inflation. The more the dollar comes under attack, the more physical gold and silver could protect your money. So if you have over $50,000 or more in your retirement savings, your money could be at risk. Learn how you can protect your life savings with physical gold and silver. Call 855-948-1605 to receive your wealth protection kit. That's right, call 855-948-1605, and Goldco may give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open a qualified account. That's why Goldco is the only company we recommend for gold and silver. Goldco is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, a 5-time Inc. winner, and has countless 5-star reviews. So, what are you waiting for? Call 855-948-1605. That's 855-948-1605. Call Goldco and get started today.
Let me shift gears. I want to get to a topic that I know you have a lot of interest in this week. The Washington Post becomes the latest news outlet to confirm that the Hunter Biden laptop was authentic. And the New York Times did the same thing last week. It was the first acknowledgement by the New York Times. This follows on Politico having done that like midway through last year, said that they claimed that they authenticated the emails. I think it's enough now. Everyone's authenticated the emails.
Yeah.
The Daily Caller, I should point out here, authenticated the emails in October of 2020. That was prior to the election.
Right.
We talked to all the cyber experts. We were able to confirm these are the real thing.
Yeah.
Where do we go beyond that? That seems like a great starter question, but this is a pretty late in the process. What comes next?
Yeah. I mean, we try to get the truth, like so often. Our job in Congress is to try to get the truth to the American people. We had the truth. You guys had the truth. But big tech, I mean, we just got 2 letters going out today to some of the big tech companies, asking them, who all did you talk to? What information? Why did you suppress this information and keep it from the American? Because that's what happened. Big tech, big media, and big Democrat Party all colluded, along with 51 former Intel officials, saying that this was Russian disinformation, when in fact the disinformation was what these 51 Intel people were telling us, what big tech and big media and big Democrats were telling us. So yeah, the laptop was real. The eyewitness, Tony Bobulinski, was real. The emails were real. 10% for the big guy was real. The same big guy who was telling the prosecutor in Ukraine, don't prosecute Burisma, the folks that run this company, the same company that was paying his son lots of money. I mean, that's all real. And we said this a year and a half ago, and they kept it from us. So we're going to try to get to the truth. That's our job. It's our constitutional duty as the legislative branch. But I guess it's kind of nice that maybe now the mainstream press is actually admitting that it was real. But this is a pattern.
Well, what do you think was the impetus? What was the impetus for now? I mean, it's kind of strange that the New York Times and the Washington Post chose these 2 weeks just right back to back to say that the emails are authentic. What's happening there?
I mean, your hunch is, and my guess it's a great question you asked, and you're probably thinking the same thing, is there must be something bigger coming. There must be something more. I mean, we know, but of course, according to news reports, the Justice Department is looking into Hunter Biden's tax situation, tax liability, and was there some concerns there? But that, we sort of knew that. So what else is there? Is there something bigger coming? I don't know. But I asked the same question. Why now? And why are they? I mean, the Post yesterday had 2 stories, multiple long stories, multiple pages that delved into this. So something's happening. There's a reason for it. I don't think it's just, out of the goodness of our heart, we finally realized we were wrong. I was getting ready to say too, Vince, that and Jason, that this is a pattern. They always accuse us of disinformation when in fact we're giving the truth and they're the ones with the disinformation. I mean, they did the same thing with the dossier and the Russia Mueller, all that investigation. So time and time again, they accuse us of what actually what we're saying turns out to be the truth.
So you're right in that I'm suspecting that there may be some Justice Department action coming on Hunter Biden in the near term. Well, I'll believe it when I see it. But one of your colleagues, the ranking member on the Oversight Committee, Congressman James Comer, I asked him about this recently, and he started indicating that the Justice Department investigation is a lot hotter than people realize. And I said, well, we've known for a while. Politico had reported, I think in December of 2020, about the Justice Department inquiry into his taxes and the money that he's taking in and whether or not he adequately paid his taxes. James Comer told me, he said that non-public information has revealed to him that this is way bigger than people realize, that the Justice Department is very much digging into him. I think it's interesting, one, because I think a lot of conservatives would reflexively believe there's no way the Justice Department is going to give us anything on Hunter Biden. It's Joe Biden, it's corrupt, but maybe it's possible that Biden is actually maintaining at least a wall of separation on this issue, and that there could be something interesting popping out.
Well, that would be, I don't know if that's the case, but if it is the case, it would sort of make sense why you're seeing this come from the Post now. And maybe it's a lot worse than we think. Maybe there's something really big. I don't know, but we're just gonna have to wait and see what we find out here.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think it does seem like there's some sort of wall of separation. I don't know. Again, I don't know. And Vince knows very well that I could give two, bird turds about Hunter Biden, one way or the other. Like, that guy, he could go to jail. I mean, I wish him well, like I wish all human beings well, but I don't think that, and I don't think that Democrats or people on the left are coming out to defend Hunter Biden. And it looks like President Biden has not interfered. He hasn't gone and tried to fire a prosecutor. He hasn't even mulled the issue, which, there was debate about the situation with Mueller, which, by the way, that investigation was not supposed to be into President Trump, and it wasn't about President Trump. It was about whether Russia interfered in our 2016 election, which it found that they did.
Well, Jason, you should have told that to Adam Schiff and all the people who told us there was more than circumstantial evidence that President Trump colluded with Russia. There was zero evidence, and there was zero findings that took place. So you should have told that to the people doing the investigation if that's what it was really about. Yeah, they couldn't find the evidence. And I'll say this: I was saying it. Well, Democrats don't listen to me, but I was saying that as well. When it was happening, that the evidence wasn't there, and it was mainly because Bob Woodward, who is probably the greatest journalist of our time, or the most accomplished journalist, said it wasn't there. Said he looked at it, he couldn't find any evidence, and he found evidence of all kinds of things that Trump did and said, but he didn't find the evidence for that. It not only wasn't there, it was all political. It was all made up. We know that now from the Durham report. And, oh, by the way. Well, Jason, by the way, the FEC just fined the Clinton campaign like $1 million. That story just happened this week because they made this stuff up. So you got the FEC fight. Everyone's coming clean now. Now it's been like, it's 6 years ago, but even the FEC goes after the Clinton campaign. You guys lied to us. This was political. The dossier, all it was garbage. All done for political reasons. So even the FEC finally got around to doing the right thing, and they fined the Clinton campaign $1 million.
Let me jump in on something that.
I do want to make one point. One talking point.
Okay, go ahead.
Since Congressman Jordan was saying, that Democrats are the party of the super wealthy and the super poor. I think it was something you said, and everybody else. First of all, I'm fine with being the party of the poor, but I will say this. And he mentioned Ohio. I didn't say the poor. I said the people who don't work. Ohio going for President Trump twice, and I'll concede that. But one of the things that we did see is Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin not going for President Trump, and so that would kind of belie this idea that that the Republicans are the party for everyone else. My point was you're seeing a shift, and look, let's be. We saw this 2 weeks ago. We saw the disdain that the left now has for working class, middle class people in flyover country. You saw Buttigieg said, "Oh, if you don't like $4 gas, buy an electric vehicle." Okay, tell that to farmers and manufacturers. So I get the privilege of representing in the 4th District of Ohio. You had Colbert says, "I don't care if gas goes to $15. I drive a Tesla." Oh, okay. Let the folks in the 4th District of Ohio, let them eat cake, was his attitude. You had Anderson Cooper say, Trump supporters eat at the Olive Garden and stay at the Marriott.
which, by the way, is a pretty good weekend for folks that I represent.
Yeah.
But that's the arrogant elitist. You had Peter Strzok.
Colbert represents Democrat. I'm not
You
so
had
sure.
Peter Strzok. You had Peter Strzok say the Trump voters. He's in the Walmart
Colbert,
text message.
Anderson
Lisa Page.
Cooper. Anderson Cooper's a Vanderbilt.
I'm talking about the left. I'm talking about. I said today's left. Yeah, today's left. And I said, Peter Strzok says, he's in the Walmart. He said, I can smell the Trump supporters. The Democrats, when they brought in Professor Carlin to the impeachment hearings as one of their expert witnesses, they brought in Professor Carlin, and one of her statements she had made was liberals tend to cluster, conservatives spread out because they don't even like themselves. I mean, that is the attitude that the left has for the good folks that I get to represent. And for people like me and our family, that is their attitude. And everyone knows that. So this elitist attitude that we're better than everyone else, that is the attitude of the left. And I'm telling you, that doesn't sell well with the American people. And that's why you're seeing middle-class people, working-class people come to the Republican Party.
But see, Congressman, here is the divide. And I hope Vince will agree with me. You're talking about media elitists, which are on both sides, because we can talk about the people over at the conservative networks who make millions of dollars a year. Unfortunately, Vince and I have not made it there yet. But the conservative people who you know and you're pretty cozy with, I'm sure, because I know them, and then the people over like, Anderson Cooper and Colbert, who also make millions of dollars a year. And, what I'm talking about is Democrats who are in Southwest Atlanta, Democrats who are in rural Arizona, Democrats who are in West Philadelphia, where I'm from, Democrats who are in New York City and Harlem, another place where I was born. Like, those are the places, people in Roxbury, where my wife is from. Those are working class people. You know what I mean?
And I think they're coming. And I think they're coming to the Republican Party.
They don't want to work is frustrating.
No. I never said that. I think there are all kinds of hardworking people. I think they're coming to the Republican. That's my point. McAllen, Texas just elected, Texas on the board, just elected a Republican as mayor. They are tired of the left's policies, and they are moms and dads, African-American, Hispanic-American, all kinds of American moms and dads are now saying, I don't want these liberal elites telling me what's best for my kid in school. I think as a parent, I know what's best for my kid in school. And you're seeing more and more families from all walks of life come towards the Republican Party. That's my point. Everybody else is a huge amount of people. They're coming our way because they embrace the policies of empowering moms and dads making decisions about their kids, not some elitist school board and treating parents as domestic terrorists like the Justice Department's doing now.
That's fair, but I think it's a bad idea to use media elites as representative.
Can I jump in here?
The left or the right. I'm not going to talk about and Jason, say that the people that I know in West Virginia and Western Maryland, that they are represented by.
Jason, it wasn't just on media. I used the Secretary of Transportation. He's the one saying, hey, if you don't like $4 gas, $5 gas, go buy a electric vehicle.
And guess what? He got elected by people in a working class city.
$50,000 laying around. We'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, he got elected by people in a working class Midwestern city. Obviously
what I'm discovering,
something that they agreed with, but go ahead, Vince.
What I'm discovering is that the two of you don't agree on a whole bunch, but I'm very grateful. We've got to go because the congressman's got a busy schedule ahead of him. So Congressman Jim Jordan, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I really appreciate it. Let me just say thank you, Jim, for coming out.
I love it. I'll come back.
And definitely come back. And maybe if I see you in DC, we'll wrestle and then we'll have lunch together.
You guys when you're in town. When I see Vince, but when you're in town, Jason, we'll grab dinner and it'll be on me.
Absolutely, sounds good, Jim.
All right, see you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.